Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are taking a look at the bracket for Stage 4 in North America for OWCS here in 2024. The final main event tournament of the year in NA. So that's fun and exciting. If you did not see my video from EMEA yesterday, I'll link to that in the description and in the cards and at the end of this video. There was a little bit of a bracket mistake in that one, but don't worry, I did not make the same mistake today. I made sure to flip the bracket. But before we jump in and take a look at the bracket, let's real quick take a look at the points as we head into this tournament, because unlike EMEA, we have a little bit of intrigue here in North America. So pull up the points. You can see here the top 10 teams that are currently still alive in this tournament. It's interesting, especially with the fact that they have Citrus Nightmare on here, even though Citrus Nightmare doesn't really exist anymore and the team has become Citrus Nation and other teams. But as you can see here, unlike EMEA, where all three spots are still up for grabs, in North America, the Toronto Defiant have locked in their spot already for the tournament in Stockholm. The major, I can never remember if it's called is it the finals? I don't remember what it's called. But the Defiant, by winning every single tournament so far in North America, have locked in their spot already. They have so many circuit points that they can't be passed by a single other team. Well, Energy Shock might be able to pass them if they win and Defiant don't do well, but the gap is big enough over Nightmare, TSM, etc. that they have locked in a spot. So they're one of 3 teams already locked in for Stockholm, joining Team Falcons and Crazy Raccoon, of course. So there's 2 spots up for grabs right now. Energy Shock and Nightmare in the driving, position for those, but you never know. TSM, Shikigami, Fluffy Aimers, Citrus Nation, Rad-X, Avidity, all of them still alive. If one of them manages to somehow win the tournament, they could get in, or maybe a second place finish bumps them up. Who knows? But there you go. There's your point total as we head into this tournament. So let's now take a look at the bracket, the non-filled in brackets. You can see it here. You can see we have the Toronto Defiant taking on Energy Shock in round 1. We have Citrus Nation taking on Rad-X Avidity. Fluffy Aimers or Fluffy Dreamland taking on Shikigami, and Nightmare taking on TSM. So those are the 8 teams. One of them already locked in. 2 of them, or 2 additional ones, will be moving on to the tournament at the end of the year in Stockholm. So let's throw up now my bracket prediction. I don't think it will come as much of a surprise to anybody what I have, but here we go. Here is my bracket prediction. So opening up, I have the Toronto Defiant taking down Energy Shock in that opening game. Obviously, we did see Energy Shock with a win over the Defiant in the upper bracket finals in Stage 3 before Toronto ran it back with wins over Nightmare and then getting their revenge over the Energy Shock in the grand final. So even if there is a world where it's possible that the Defiant lose this game again, where Energy Shock are able to play to their their strength, this is an Energy Shock team that did lose already in this tournament once, losing to Fluffy Dreamland. So I think as good as Energy Shock can be, they are not looking potentially as good as they are. And look, I'm not going to pick against the Toronto Defiant in North America. They've lost 2 games total in North America. You don't lose 2 games for an entire year just because you're mediocre. They're very, very good. They're one of the best teams in the world. They've won every stage for a reason. Yeah, I'm going to pick them to win. As much as I think Energy Shock are a very tough challenge round 1, I think that it is just a better run for the Defiant. I think Energy Shock got very unlucky that this was the draw that they had to deal with, which is they have to play the Defiant round 1, but that happens, and you gotta deal with it as it comes. So that's where they are. But yeah, give me the Defiant, just because they're the Toronto Defiant. I'm gonna take Citrus Nation over Rad X Avidity. This Citrus Nation team is very interesting. Obviously, different iteration of this team from what we've seen in the past. This is the kind of combination of that former Timeless roster with some of the players from Citrus Nightmare, I believe. So it's a very interesting team. I really like what they've put together. Rad X Avidity, to me, kind of the most interesting team that I just think does not look to be as high level as some of the other teams. I just think they are probably the weakest team in the tournament right now. I don't feel as strongly about them as I do any other teams here. I think there's just a bit of a gap between what they've been able to do so far this year and the rest of the teams here. So I think Citrus Nation probably has the easiest first round game. I think that there is a bit more of a gap in competition here, and I think Citrus Nation should feel pretty good. I think they are one of the teams really fighting to get that top 3 spot. I think they could definitely upset a team like Nightmare, even Energy Shock potentially, and move on in this tournament and clinch a spot for Stockholm. But I think that this round 1 game for them should be quite easy. I think they'll be fine, and I think they'll take down Rad X Avidity. Next is Fluffy Dreamland, or Fluffy Aimers, versus Shikigami. This is a very interesting game to me. Shikigami, obviously, as we may know, got very close to beating the Toronto Defiant in the group stage. When Sugar Free was out, Sugar Free comes back, they run it back, and they take down Shikigami. So we know Shikigami has talent. We know they have the ability to compete with, if the Defiant aren't playing their best, maybe they have the talent to be able to move on and win. They have a very good roster. You just look at the names on this roster. Taejong and Sonjun, their DPS, are unbelievable. Anyun, once again, finds another new roster to be on this year. Just a nomad at this point, ending up on every team there is. You have the tank Mari, who was playing for Valentine for a lot of the last year, played for Michael Wave, stuff like that. So very, very interesting team with a lot of talent kind of brought together. But we've seen a lot of success from Fluffy Dreamland this year. They have been very, very good. They obviously had the upset win over Energy Shock. They've been continually getting better and better throughout the year. They've been kind of adding new pieces, and they've been looking better as time has kind of carried on. And I think they're a pretty solid team, all things considered. I've been quite happy with how they've performed this year, and I think that they are one of the more dangerous teams here in this tournament. I think they're kind of underdogs, but once again, I think they could easily be that team that upsets a team like Nightmare or the Shock again, and they manage to lock in a spot for Stockholm just because they've shown that potential. I think they're a little more unlikely than a team like Citrus Nation, but I have been impressed with them so far, and I think they do take this one. Final game here in the first round is Nightmare versus TSM. I'm not in love with what TSM has been able to do so far this year. Obviously, they did a very good start to the year, and then they kind of started falling off. They kind of became a little bit weaker over time. They have some talented players. They have some pieces that I feel very good about, but they just haven't been able to put it together in the later kind of points of the season. They were very good in Face It Masters Season 2. They almost won that tournament, but they didn't. Obviously, they lost. They got second in that versus the Timeless team that is now mostly that Citrus Nation team. So they are a team that has not really been able to get some of those big wins late in the year since that first stage. They've kind of fallen flat. And so I think that they are up against a Nightmare team that, to me, just is firing on all cylinders. I really like this Nightmare roster. I think on pretty much all levels, they are more well-rounded. They have a really good backline with Admiral, CJ, and ZSS. You have maybe the best DPS player in North America with Seeker. And you pair that with Lethal and Zera, who both, depending on what they have to, which one you need, you have a ton of firepower. And they have a very strong tank duo as well. So I just think that Nightmare has a better team. I think they have just higher-end talent. I just think that they have been incredible this year, especially since that kind of Esports World Cup run that they made. That I really think this team has everything you want from them to be successful. I actually think this game could be very one-sided. I think TSM is a talented roster, but they just do not come up big in those big final moments, in those big games. They just seem to kind of shrink, and Nightmare has been very good at playing up to the challenge and really kind of proving themselves. So I feel much better about them, and I think they're going to take this one. This would, of course, set up Toronto Defiant versus Citrus Nation. Give me the Defiant. I'm sorry, Citrus Nation. Give me the Defiant. And then Fluffy Aimers versus Nightmare. I like Nightmare better. Like I said, I think they just have been firing all cylinders. I think right now they might be the second best team in North America. I love what they've done. I love this core roster. I love the pieces they have, and I think that as good as I think Fluffy Dreamland is, and as much as I think that they could be a threat to make it into this into Stockholm as like the 3 seed, right now I feel better about Nightmare. And I think they take that one. And then in the upper bracket final, give me Defiant over Nightmare. Once again, I just don't see Defiant not being the best team in North America right now. They've been consistently the best. They will continue to be the best. I just think nothing's really getting in the way of that. So, lower bracket now. Round 1, Energy Shock against Rad X Avidity. Sorry, Rad X Avidity. Like I said, I think you are probably right now in this top 8 the weakest looking team. And so I'm going to take Energy Shock to win this one. I think Energy Shock are still a top 3 team in North America. Just because they didn't win their group doesn't mean anything. We see stuff like that all the time. Group stage comes, something happens, all of a sudden, nope, now we're playing in a much harder match than we need to. I think they'll be fine. I think the Energy Shock are the better team. If they have to play anybody else, if they were in any other part of the bracket, they probably would have won. They just were unlucky enough to have to play Defiant. They're going to be fine. Shikigami versus TSM. Maybe a bit of a surprise to some people, but I'm picking Shikigami. I think the fact, obviously, the Defiant near win was without Sugarfree, was without one of their best players. They had Danny, their coach, playing in a sub role. Obviously, when you look at that, it's like, okay, yeah, you should be able to beat a team like that. But we've seen the Defiant clown on teams in the past. If I remember correctly, there was like a point in Stage 1 or Stage 2, I think it was Stage 1, where they were playing Danny because someone was, and they were still like beating people. They were still demolishing people with an assistant coach in. So we're not talking about those kinds of rosters. We're talking about very good, very strong team here that has been pretty consistently dominant against a lot of people, and now they're able to do it against some really, really, really high-level competition, and they can't get away with it anymore, right? And we saw that in this Shikigami game. And I think Shikigami has looked very, very good. It could be the Songjun revenge game. He was on TSM before they got rid of him. They dumped him, and he went back to Korea, and now he's back here. I think that he's been very good for this team this year. He has been unbelievably talented so far. And I just really like what they have done this year as a whole. I really think what we're seeing from Shikigami is a very strong roster with a very strong core. And I think that they, right now, I think it could easily go the way of TSM. I think TSM has been the consistent, bigger team this year. But I just have not been impressed with them this year. Since that Stage 1 performance where they made it to the grand finals, I feel like they have just been a honestly, like a clout broker. They have done nothing really. They've been, I mean, they didn't even make, when they were still, before they were TSM, when they were still timeless, they didn't even make it to the stage 2 group stage, or the main event. May have been the main event I didn't make it to. They have done okay, they've gotten better, but they just, to me, are not a super impressive team right now. And I thought Shikigami looked pretty good, so I'm going to take Shikigami. Maybe in a shocking upset, I don't know. But I'm going to roll Shikigami for that one. Then, Energy Shock would take on the Fluffy Aimers, Fluffy Dreamland team, get some revenge, and beat them after the group stage defeat, where Fluffy Dreamland was able to win their group over Energy Shock. Now, I think Energy Shock get their revenge, and are victorious over a Fluffy Dreamland team that looked pretty good, but I just have to go with the team that's done a lot more, that has been much better this year, and I still believe that Energy Shock are one of the top teams here in North America. Citrus Nation would then play Shikigami. Give me Citrus Nation. I think they're the better team. They looked better, they've been better, kind of more consistent, so I'm going to take them. This would set up Energy Shock, Citrus Nation. Give me the Shock. Shout out to the boys. Shout out to the thems. Shout out to PGE. Shout out to Cal. Shout out to Racket Deck. I love this Energy Shock roster, which is funny because I historically was the biggest San Francisco Shock hater in the world. But now it's okay. I think they're pretty good, and I want to see them win some games. And I'm going to take them to take out Citrus Nation here. And then in the lower bracket final, I'm taking Nightmare. I think right now they're playing better than what we've seen from Energy Shock. Energy Shock have been the more consistent team. I don't know when the last time these two teams played, honestly. I think it's been a little while, but I think Nightmare's just right now in a better position. I think they're looking a little bit better. I think they have managed to get their stuff together a little bit more recently. And I think we're seeing that they have managed to have more consistency this year. They've been a little bit more, or maybe not this year as a whole, but recently. And I think that they just are in a spot right now where I feel better about them winning that one. But it doesn't matter because they're going to lose to Toronto Defiant in the Grand Finals. Doesn't matter who makes it in the Grand Finals. Toronto's going to win. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse every time I do a bracket here in North America. But until someone does it, until someone beats the Defiant in a Grand Final, I don't really care. They could lose in the upper bracket final. It don't matter. They're going to win the Grand Final anyway. Until they don't. Until they have to play Falcons and Crazy Raccoon, no one's beaten the Toronto Defiant in an elimination game. And I believe that pretty wholeheartedly. That's just what we've seen this year, and I think that's where we are. So, there you go. That's my bracket. A little less spicy, I think, than the EMEA. A little less intrigue, but all in all, pretty good. So, let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this one. Where do you agree with me? Where do you disagree with me? Whatever it is, I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing, as your support does help out a lot with the channel. That's going to be all from me for today. Thank you all once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.